I know you wanted to have a conversation about you getting into esports or something like that. Do you want to give some context again, just so like we can get on the same page?
Yeah. So I've always I started playing League in season 5, and even before that, I've always kind of watched the pro scene or whatever game I was playing at the time. So before League, it was like Counter Strike and Call of Duty and stuff. And I always wanted to be in like that kind of environment and that like situation where you're working with a team and trying to progress to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
I coach hockey right now, so in my free time, that's where I was before this. Um, and the league scene is always something. It's probably the game I've played the most of anything, and just getting into that, like whether it's an analyst position or like a coaching position at any league, it's just kind of like trying to figure out how to get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like in the pro scene, at least, like the head coaches will kind of get let go, and then they just get picked up by another team who also let go of their head coach that
Yeah.
season, and it just kind of like coaches get passed around. It doesn't feel like many new coaches come in.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It's weird because I think there's this thing where there's not a good route to get into coaching,
Hmm.
and it's really scary to put your whole team like on the line for taking a chance on someone that doesn't have any proven record, right?
Exactly.
So it's always safer to just go with someone that you know that can do it, and then hopefully the general manager or someone else like can help guide the coach better. And then actually finding experienced coaches is really really difficult. So then I guess like that's why what is it? Having the analysts and assistant coaches and academy coaches, like that's I guess the way you bring up like new talent in the head coaching position. But
Yeah.
I totally get what you mean, especially ideally, I think people are like, oh, there's plenty of people with that coaching experience professionally. Like you said, like you coaching hockey and those kind of things. But then bringing that into the league scene is really tricky because players' ego.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, I coach like 11-year olds, so it's not like I'm dealing with like pro sports teams either.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So we're going to try to figure out how to get you into, I guess, that like coaching or maybe like the competitive staff, I guess, right? It's a coaching staff.
Yeah, it's not even like I want to be like the head coach who's running all the drafts or dealing with all the players. It's just like being in that environment in general is just something I've always thought would be really cool, but I
Mm-hmm.
never really know how to do it. I feel like the gaming scene in that scene, especially when you're looking at like joining orgs and going the pro side of games rather than like the game making side of it, it's like everyone seems to have been there for a really long time, and they kind of got in like super early, and their spots are just kind of locked at this point.
So I guess the biggest problem then is figuring out how to break into it, um,
Hmm.
because the esports scene like recycles talent, right? Esports
Yeah.
scene. Yeah, I'm just writing stuff down so I can kind of keep track of everything that we're talking about.
Yep, you're good.
Um, or typing stuff. So I guess one thing I always do when I'm trying to figure out how people have done something or how to do something is to figure out how people have done it in the past, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I think I mentioned this to you on our DMs is like Zix Lol, who is now the coach of 100 Thieves. I remember hearing, I think it was like a Thorn podcast now. Um,
I think he talked about it in like when he made the switch to TSM. Like somewhere in that video, he also talked about how he came to CLG just like spamming, what was it, Reddit
yeah, so
with
his
like.
CLG story is crazy. He basically, and it was like early days, but he would just
Mhm.
he would just send like full page, like 3-page reports to CLG on their subreddit. That's like, hey, you're against this matchup next week. Like, this is what I think about TSM. This is what I think about Curse Gaming or whatever else. Like, whoever was in the scene back then, and he just
Yeah.
sends stuff. And um, eventually, it got noticed. And back in the day, he was able to just pretty much like DM like Hotshot or something like that, and
Yeah.
really, really easily get attention. Obviously, it's a lot harder now as the scene's gotten more solidified and there's more people in it. But probably listening to like how he did it and what that grind looks like, and even just like figuring out what valuable information is for a coaching staff is probably a good resource. You could
Mm-hmm.
also find there's numerous interviews with these people, anyone in LCS, or not anyone, but a lot of people in the LCS coaching staff, where you can hear things. Like I think, for example, with Golden Guardians, we have someone like Raz, who is the academy coach. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was a caster in LPL, and he is really good on camera, and he speaks really well, and he's done lots of interviews. He's been on Hotline League multiple times. You could probably find stuff like people that are a lot more forward facing and just how they got into it, because whenever interviewers talk to these people, they're like, oh, how'd you get into coaching? What's your recommendations for people looking into coaching? Even just a quick Google search or like YouTube search of just like how to become an esports head coach, you'll probably find stuff. That's how to become an esports head coach or esports coach. Let's see. So yeah, there's like Loco Doco does a guide that's 1 year old, so that's pretty relevant. Weldon does stuff, whatever your opinions are on Weldon right now, especially. I don't know what UGC
Uh,
is. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff actually right now. So I think there's a lot of advice from people out there. Oh, even Monte Cristo probably talks a little bit about it too, and especially in the early days. But my thought is, what the work is going to look like is you have to build authority in the space,
mm-hmm.
and the only way, like the traditional way of doing things in like any traditional job, is like you go to college and you get an internship and then an entry level job, and then you climb your way up the corporate ladder until you get to like that dream job you've been looking for, right?
Yeah.
um, for something like this, you can skip so many steps, but there's no like set direction and easy way for people to just like follow a template.
Yeah.
So I think finding examples of that template for how people have done it in the past is like one of the easiest ways to do it. But it just requires a lot more individual work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about like even creating content, because when I think about like LS, are you familiar with LS?
Yeah. I watch a little too much LS.
Yeah, like he does coaching stuff now, doesn't he? Or he did for LCK. I don't know what his involvement is.
He kind of gets tossed around. He does a lot of like private work with like players one on one more so than like whole teams.
Gotcha.
So he does a lot of stuff with like some of the Fnatic players like Whippo and Nemesis, and then
Mm-hmm.
uh, he kind of runs his own like little coaching ring one on one, and then, but I don't think he's doing any like full team coaching right now.
Yeah. So like even just thinking about, like, as someone that doesn't follow LS that well, like even thinking about the brand that he's built for himself by just making content about teams and analysis of the game and being angry and being on podcasts and doing streams, like I think of him as an authority in this space. Whether, and to be honest, I have no idea if what he says is right or wrong, and when he complains about itemization or whatever. But everyone goes to him to figure out, is itemization correct or wrong? Did Haunter make a mistake building Morellos or not? You know,
Yeah.
but that's because he's built authority in the space, and I think that's probably the first step you could start doing. And I know we talked about like the content stuff that you're working on.
Yeah.
Just figuring out what value you have and what insight you have, and then I guess polishing that to figure out. You might think you know what you might think you know about itemization, and then once you start doing it, you realize like, oh, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and then also just like, do you have video editing experience? And if you don't,
No.
yeah, so then you having to figure out how to do that kind of stuff is always really really tricky, right? So
Yeah.
so it's ultimately it's going to take a lot of time to just even get to a place where you're probably competent at it. And then once you're competent, then it's just like, how do you get to the right places? How do you find the right networks? How do you find the right job, right? um
Yeah.
and then even just doing like the random free work for like amateur organizations, maybe a stepping stone is like working for a high school like league team, because I know like Plays Versus, I think that's the company. Yeah, they're a high school league. So there's other high schools that are competing. If you find either maybe paid or free opportunities to help learn how to like work with players, is probably also a very important skill to have. To learn to work with egos and learn to work with people that may be a higher rating than you, those kind of things. Uh, because I think that's probably a huge skill that coaches need to have that they may or may not have, and that actually
Yeah.
makes a big impact.
So I've looked into the high schools in my general area, and none of them have any sports program.
Mm,
So I've looked into it that much. I do go to college, and my college does have a league team. Now, recently, I had tried out for the league team, um, for their varsity team,
yeah.
and then there's talks to where if I don't make it, that I would come on as like a piece of the coaching staff.
Hmm.
Because originally they weren't opening it to online students, and then the whole thing with COVID happened, and they're like, well, everyone's online, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And my original plan was to just still apply for the coaching spot anyway, and just try and go this route, because I don't think there's any way that at 21 and being hard stuck like plat 1D4 that I'm gonna go and all of a sudden make it pro. But they told me to try out anyway, and then if it doesn't work, then we can talk about coaching, and then
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering like, because for example, Golden Guardians coaching staff is made up of Anero, who got in really early
yeah.
doing random coaching and analyst work for like random organizations.
Hmm.
And then you have, so he at least has like the experience being a coach, but
Hmm.
then the coaching staff he has hired around himself are all like, we have two Australian ex-pro players, um, and then Razzleplasm, who's a caster. He might not be high elo though. I don't know what his story is before casting. So I feel like it's really hard to, I feel like Diamond 1 is always like, if you're, that's the line where you're good at the game or not.
Yeah.
And I say that as a plat 4 or like gold 2 right now or whatever, you know? So uh, there needs to be some authority because, yeah, there needs to be some authority. And I think one thing you can do is if you can show that you're like a diamond player, that's going to help. But there's also plenty of examples of people that are lower elo that are able to teach the game and understand the game at a high enough level. It's just you have to make up for the lack of elo, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where like the balancing act comes into, where it's like it's either I start like putting a lot of the time into like making the content, learning the editing, like doing VOD reviews, doing stuff like that, or I put the time in now into like solo queue, work on getting like the elo, and put like more of a backing behind like my knowledge as a person and as a
Mm-hmm.
player, and then doing the like VOD stuff later.
Yeah, and I think like you'll have to figure out what you think is the best way to do it. But I also think that if you're doing more of the VOD review and understanding the game, it'll probably just increase your elo anyway, right? If you're able to understand like, sorry, that's my dog on my lap
Okay. I
snorting.
have 4 dogs, so hopefully they don't start barking at any point during this.
No problem. Yeah, I think yeah, what was I saying? Uh,
Yeah, once you do the VOD reviews, the elo kind of comes later, but
yeah, I think it'll come with it. If you understand like efficient itemization, that's gonna help your game, right? And I don't
yeah.
think you should ever stop playing the games that you're trying to learn, because like
Oh, of
even
course.
Nick, our coach, like actually just like hates playing games, but he continues playing it because he knows it's valuable. Like he knows it's valuable,
No,
and
yeah,
he
for
plays
sure.
at a like I think a diamond level or something to like kind of like just test things out and feel things out too, and just understand like what players are going through.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that's still really important. And also, I think even just doing the practice of like understanding what you should be analyzing and knowing where your gaps of knowledge are is important now, because you could also be in this phase where it's like you're in the learning phase where you have to try a whole bunch of things and see what sucks and what is good and what's working, and understanding like what's valuable to teams and building up that experience. Because I
Hmm.
think might a lot of people go into the esports, like looking into esports, where it's like, hey, how do I get a job in 3 months or like 1 month? And because of that, they do all these like they plan short term, where it's like, okay, so I'm gonna do like 5 VOD reviews, you know,
Hmm.
and that's gonna get me a job in esports. Versus like, what if I told you like you don't have enough experience now, but if you work 12 months, you can totally get a job. I don't know if those are the right numbers.
No,
So
yeah.
then if you have a lot more time, suddenly your strategy changes of like what you need to work on, because you're not necessarily just working on like the lowest hanging fruit and uh, looking for what gives you short-term benefits, but instead you're thinking about like what's going to be a long-term value, right? It's like training for a marathon versus like, hey, I'm just going to train to like run a mile by the end of this week.
Yeah.
Your strategy completely change. And I think that also helped me too, when I realized like, okay, um, I need to just grind out for a while before I can start applying to jobs again. Like I hit that moment, and then eventually I was like, okay, you know what? I realized like I'm really bad at video editing and I'm getting better at it. Or like, oh my gosh, I thought I knew social media, but I'm actually really, really bad at it. So now I need to spend the next like 3 months going through like these courses or whatever. I think
Hmm.
that's what will happen once you start like thinking about this thing. You said you're 21.
Yeah.
So what, are you graduating at 22 or uh
I So when I graduated high school, I started a machining apprenticeship because I went to tech school for machining all throughout high school
uh-huh.
because I liked like the computer and math aspect of it. Um, and then when you get into the industry, it's completely different. So in December, I dropped my apprenticeship, and January I started college. So
Oh, okay. So you still got time in
and
college.
yeah, I have a bunch of time in college, and well, I'm 6 months in. My course is two. It's like I think it's 29 months, so it's like around 2.5 years for my bachelor's.
Mm-hmm.
It's rushed, so we have a week off for like Christmas and then like a week off for spring break, and that's it.
Oh man. So you don't
Yeah.
even have a ton of free time to do this kind of like side hustle either, huh?
It's working through trying to balance everything right now. So my workload right now is school, which the first like 4 or 5 months were pretty easy, but it's getting a lot harder to kind of the actual assignments, there's a lot more going into them, so like I'm losing time there. And then I coach ice hockey and I work a full-time job. So a lot of my work is just cutting into like how much I sleep.
Oh, yeah, that's really tough.
It's a lot to juggle. I've talked to my dad because I live at home, so I don't have to like worry about like rent. I have my own bills I have to pay, but I don't have to worry about like as many bills as normal. He
Sure.
said he'd be fine if I like found like a part time job as long as I'm getting some money in because I've set myself up like a pretty nice cushion in terms of like money in the bank.
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, even thinking of, you also have to think like what's realistic, right? And
Yeah.
like you need to survive. I hate hearing these
Mhm.
stories of people trying to get into esports that are couch surfing and like are like literally depressed because the it's just too hard, like clinically depressed because it's just really really difficult, and
Yeah.
they're just putting themselves in bad situations. And like I'm not saying that you won't be able to get in the industry before you graduate or anything like that, but even understanding like, hey, what if you can get in the industry in 5 years because you need to graduate, you kind of keep things on the side and like do things during those week breaks that you have, or like when you have free time, or you're like even like watching new esports and new games that are up and coming to like maybe be a coach for those things. um
Hmm.
and then graduating, getting a job where now you have suddenly like have income, you're working 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week or 60 hours, like you have some more stability, and then that's where you can start like grinding really hard, make some money, and then if things work out, like 2 years after you graduate, you could make the jump into esports if you feel like it, or maybe you just like love working in the game industry anyway. As like you said, game designer, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you love that and you don't like need to go into coaching. Who knows? Um, but even having those kind of like smart plans that are less risky, I think can make sense. But that's ultimately up to your decision and also confidence about like what you want to do, right?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't plan on like I wouldn't say like going part time is risky,
Mm-hmm.
and because like it's not like I'd say I cut my hours to like 20 or 30 hours, like somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It's not like all 10 of those hours are going into like, oh, now I'm just gonna do VOD reviews for 6 hours and play solo queue for 4 hours. It's like, okay, maybe now I have like 2 extra hours to do solo queue. Maybe I have like 2 to 3 extra hours to do like VOD review, work on editing, and then the rest of it is just going into like focusing on school more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, I don't think you're like. I feel like you've thought about this, which is good. You're not just like, oh, esports is cool and I want to be a part of it, and I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. Like you have at least like a start of it, so that's
Yeah.
nice. Um, One thing I also want to talk about is like growing your network now.
Hmm.
As you start creating content, um, I think you should. Let me see. You have Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What's your Twitter profile?
Uh, Astroz BK.
It was BK,
Yeah.
like Burger King.
It's not what it stands for, but we'll go with it.
um. Okay, so you're somewhat active. I'm guessing you lurk a lot, but you don't post a lot, right?
Yeah, I just kind of retweet stuff and like stuff, and that's about it.
Yeah, which is fine. I think making sure during this whole time you're able to like start networking on here would be really good. I know for coaches and analysts and coaching staff and like general managers, like just competitive staff in general, they get
Yep.
bombarded with messages like, "Hey, I want to be a pro. I'm gonna be the next amazing Bjergsen in the mid lane, or I'm gonna be the next double lift. Like, sign me now." You know, like they get
Yeah.
so many random stuff, right? So cold DMing them is like really, really, really difficult. Um,
No, I think I've like reached out. I think I sent like Mark Z like a message at one point, like trying just ask him how he got like started in the scene because I
mhm.
tried like I think Mark is one of my like favorite on air talents, and I think he's got like a really good brand about the game.
Awesome.
But like I couldn't find any like backstory on him and how he got started. So
Oh, interesting. I know there is.
I'm
Huh.
sure it's like early on, like when he got started in like Hotline League, they probably talked about it. But
Yeah, yeah. I know there's a Hotline League episode where they talk about it. Oh boy, but searching for that might be really tricky. Um, and now he's a big enough personality where it's gonna really be hard to catch his attention and get like one-on-one time with him, obviously. Um,
yeah, I shot him like one DM. I was like, oh, we'll see what happens. I didn't
yeah,
hear back. I was like, oh well.
yeah, it's okay. You shoot your shot. So I think like Mark Z is actually someone that also I feel like he what was it? Oh yeah, I wanted to see. I think he does interact with people on Twitter though. So if he does, like I would even think about having him on like clicking the bell on his like Twitter so
Hmm.
that when he tweets something, you being someone that engages and provides value, right? Like
Hmm.
actually have a conversation and not feel like you're trying to get something from him. And this is something like I've done to network and with multiple people. And it's not like something that suddenly he'll respond to your DM in 2 days. This is like
No, yeah,
something that
it's
you build a
long.
rapport and relationship. Yeah, it's a long term thing. But then I think even just like following what he talks about and then like, you know, finding other people that are similar to Mark Z, like, you know, Azael, and then you start seeing he's talking to like Immortal's assistant coach that you didn't know who that was or something like that. And then you start talking to
Mhm.
that person, you engage with their tweets, and then you build this rapport. And then, um, like, I actually early in this stream, I talk about like how to do this stuff on Twitter. And then,
Mhm.
not to shamelessly plug, but I think the latest YouTube video I put out was just like even things not to do when you like DM people. Um, that one also might be helpful information. I'll
I
link that in.
watched I, when we first started talking, when I had first messaged you,
Yeah.
and you told me about it. I went and I watched like a whole bunch of like the ones that you actually went through.
Oh, nice.
Um, but I did not watch the one that you posted yesterday. But I
Yeah.
have like I watched all your start here for your new videos, and then a lot of like the new ones that you posted within the last week and stuff.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that.
I mean, they're well made, so
Oh, thanks. I try. I'm very I think they're garbage, but apparently people find it valuable, so I keep doing them. Yeah.
if you think yours are garbage, then we just won't talk about anything I have to say.
Hey, that's the thing. Like I think one thing that helped me in my content creation like thing is just like knowing that um the first 100 things I make are gonna be garbage, and it's okay
No.
because no one's gonna see them anyway. But then once I get to 101 and 102, like they start getting better and better, and like the more intentional you are and the more time you have, like it'll get better. But
Mhm.
I just think about a lot of the things I do as practice. Like I'm eventually gonna stop doing resume reviews, and I'm kind of happy that none came in this week because they're really boring to edit, and I don't think they're really great for my YouTube channel. But I
Mhm.
kind of want to do like 50 of them or 20 of them, because then suddenly like whenever a resume comes in, I just like know how to talk about resumes, and I know like, oh, I've seen this type of resumes, oh, this is like the best formatting, this is the things that like you should be looking for, and like I know that I'm just practicing. So then eventually I'll put out a video that's like, oh, the 5 tips to like to make your resume the best resume in esports, and then I can start talking about that, right? So just
Mhm.
knowing that a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now is practice, and luckily some people still think like even as I'm practicing, it's still useful to them and I'm still providing value. That's really cool. That's like a nice cherry on top. But I'm ultimately doing things knowing that these are kind of crappy or they could be better, but it's really just to learn, right? um but I sidetracked a bit. Yeah, I
Uh,
think like when you're talking to trying to network to people that are in the industry, uh knowing that Mark Z is going to be a tough person to get across, like understanding then what's the next level down maybe of like people that you could contact, and if that's not working, what's the next level down and down and down. Like for example, do you know who Manny is? I've talked about him a few times. He's been in chat. He was part of Lola stuff a little bit too.
I think you did a resume review for him, but I don't know who he is.
Yeah, so like for example, he is someone that has some coaching experience, and he's not a full-time coach. He was trying to get coaching stuff. I don't know what his goal is right now. I think it's still to do coaching stuff, but he lives in Brazil now. And like even talking to him, where you can learn at least like how did he get his collegiate coaching job for, I don't know if it was 6 months or a year or 2 years, but like even talking to someone like that might give you some
Mhm.
insight, and then you just kind of like climb up the ladder and just networking with these people, and even putting collaborating with him to like put content out might be a good idea, right? So as you
Mhm.
keep your like eyes open and you see what other people are doing, and you're networking and finding people that are either similar level as you, or maybe have been in trying to do this like for a year or two more than you, and getting that information, and then slowly
Yeah.
like building authority in the scene, and then suddenly like you make a YouTube channel, like your fifth YouTube channel that you're trying starts to like pick up, and then like, oh, that one Reddit post actually went really like kind of got some traction that brought some um stuff to you. Like for example, if you're the first person to put out like why TSM or why Golden Guardians beat TSM, and it was like good and it was on Reddit, like that would probably do something because that was like a hot topic. TSM fans are really angry, and if you had the right clickbait and title, like those kind of things, um,
Yeah.
that's something that you could have taken advantage of. But obviously, like that's really really hard to do. But just figuring out ways to to network and build authority, like low hanging fruit is just finding the not so big things, right? Let's see. the Golden Guardians subreddit is not managed by anyone, like at Golden Guardians, I think, and has low traction.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if you did a Golden Guardians thing, it'd get some views, right? We have stuff that's like, oh, right here on the top of it, the first post is Golden Guardians versus Team Liquid. How do we win? And it has 11 comments, 20 upvotes. So if you did this like for every single team, every single week, and posted this in their Discord, posted it in their subreddits, posted it on the League of Legends Reddit, posted it on esports Reddit, made your own blog, made your own YouTube channel, you know, that's other ways to get your content seen, especially when you feel more confident about it. But then I think for DMing or trying to get in contact with these bigger names too, instead of asking like, what was your whole story, which is obviously something that he has to spend 20 minutes trying to type something out and explaining to you and getting into a long conversation he probably doesn't have time for. If you're like, hey, I put out like this 2-paragraph like Reddit post about analysis between Golden Guardians and Team Liquid. Do you have 5 minutes to look at it and give me your thoughts if you think like you agree or disagree? Asking people for very simple things is always better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think for the most part, people in esports, like, they have the air of like they want to help and they want the scene to get better. But the thing is, they're really, really busy. So then almost like somewhat skipping niceties and being like, hi, like, how's it going? Oh, you know, I'm a big fan. And then like going back and forth instead of being like, hey, I love your stuff. I think you're really smart. And I was wondering if you could take a look at this thing that I'm working on and give me like your thoughts about like the itemization talking point that I had at 3 minutes. I think that's like something that would work with some people. Now, again, it might not work if you try to find like, if you email Reaper, right? It might be the most popular coach, but it might work for an academy coach or an assistant coach or a 2-way player coach or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's like the magic of I think the magical formula to get responses on Twitter. But then you also have to know that you're going to get ignored a lot too, unfortunately. It took me like 2 years to get noticed by Travis in DMs.
It worked in the end, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and who knows? Like maybe 6 months from now, you'll be able to like, you're like, okay, I'm going to get a response from Mark somehow. So you like think about how you're gonna like build rapport and then have the right DM and then have the right conversation or topic or content. And maybe 6 months from now, you can take another shot and see if he responds. But definitely don't spam the guy either. But I think you probably know that. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
So on the content side of it, I talked to you about like just doing like VOD review stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not the best at like being funny intentionally. Sometimes it just happens. And like I wonder, do you think viewability wise for traction, I think having like funny moments or maybe like small edits to like focus whether around like something like a really dumb play or like something like that. I struggle to know, is it better to make it enjoyable content that still has meaning, or is it less professional to do it that way? And then do I just kind of like focus on being analytical with what I talk about and things like that?
Yeah, so obviously if you're going content creation, that's like, that could be a whole nother thing, right? I'll link this guy because I really like his YouTube channel. This guy has built like 17, 16, 20 like YouTube channels, and he's full-time just doing YouTube. And he doesn't even edit his videos anymore because he just has built a system where he gets editors and gets people that he collaborates with. And this is his like new side project where he doesn't put any time into it really, but he wants to
Mhm.
kind of help people learn or help spread like the stuff he's learned about YouTube. I think there's a few things in there where he talks about the type of content you could be focusing on that will get some traction. So I would check this guy out. To answer
Okay.
some of your questions that you asked, I think it all depends on your goal and how you think you can get there, right? The reason why he popped to my mind when we are talking is that if you're able to create like the unique content that no one else is creating, that is one way that will really help build some traction. And that means like you could be the funny guy that does analyst work, right? It doesn't have to be that way, but if you could be really boring, but if you have the best information about every single Immortals Academy game, like if your content is good, people will watch it if people want to watch it, right? That might be the wrong thing to pick on because I don't know how popular Immortals Academy team is, right? Even if you make the best content about Immortals Academy, if there's only 50 people that care about Immortals Academy, that might not be the best way, or maybe that's okay because you only need 50 people to watch it or something, right? Um, I think you'll find plenty of examples of people that are really funny that had good analyst work. I think you'll find people that are really boring that still put out good analyst work. So I think it depends on just like maybe what's the best thing you can do yourself that's more natural to you. Because
Okay.
if you start trying to figure out like how do you work on your weaknesses and make them better, that's also a lot of time to work on, right? If
Yeah.
you're trying to script them and make funny jokes, like that's gonna take a lot of time. And is that worth um, investing in those skills? Maybe, maybe not. But especially if you're short on time, those are the things that you kind of have to think about what's important and what's gonna create the most impact. And that is gonna be very case by case basis, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just like I I wouldn't say it's like a short term accelerant like method to try
Mm-hmm.
and get like the traction faster is like appealing to the general audience because then like your numbers go up and then
Yeah.
when your numbers go up like more people now see it and it's like it's just like a balance act like figuring out if it's worth it in the short term to better benefit the long term.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I even think like depending on what you think you like know about the game, like what you think your strengths of knowledge are or what you think is valuable, like doing a VOD review, I think you still see a lot of analysts do that. And I even saw one recently that I just clicked off after 3 minutes because it was really boring.
Mhm.
And when he was talking, like it was an analysis review, but then he was only like reacting to plays like, wow, Bjergsen did something crazy there. And I'm like, okay, this guy has no value in his video.
Mm.
Um, what I could see the easy thing to do that which might not do well is like you just play the VOD and you stop and talk about things. But instead, I think what might be more impactful is if you talked about one specific play and like how they could have team fought better, or you specifically talk about like in the Golden Guardians. I'm just gonna keep using this
No,
example:
yeah,
Golden
yeah,
Guardians
you're
versus
fine.
TSM. Um, like the bad itemization choices or the smart itemization choices, or why did this person take this rune which you don't like? For example, like why did Demonte? What other runes Demonte took on Ziggs, and if it's any different from like what other pros are taking, or why it made sense, or why it wasn't efficient. Like these taking really small bites, so it's not like this 60-minute video where you're just kind of talking without like knowing exactly what's gonna happen. And it's
Yeah,
also harder to sell that. But if you like focus on really small specific things, and if you're able to focus on something so small that it's like a 1 minute video that you could actually post on Twitter too, and that you could tag Mark Z in, or like you can tag Golden Guardians in, like those are a lot more digestible, right? Um, but if you think about YouTube, maybe having longer form, but just really like to the point title and thumbnail so people exactly know what they're getting to could also be really helpful. Let's see, what do we talk? We talked about some strategies for networking, right? We talked
Hmm.
about some content strategies that might be low hanging fruit. We talked about short term and long term plans too, and like the realistic nature of like what your situation is, and with like esports aspirations.
Yeah.
Um, like, are you really set on League of Legends, or would you be open to other games?
So I've been at the, I wouldn't say like, I'd say high level, but like in comparison to like pro play, it's not high level in like Counter Strike and COD. So I did like the COD E leagues and tournaments back in the day, and then same with like Counter Strike. I did what's it called, like SIVA and like all those competitive aspects of it.
Okay,
I've never really like, I've been at like the higher end in comparison to the average, but I've never been at like the high end where you gain respect from people at like the real high level, like the pros.
gotcha. I think if you're open to it, one thing that Jeremy says is being really fast on new things, because if you're able to be the first, that always helps. So let's say Hyperscape was like getting hyped up and now it's released. Are you familiar with that game?
Yeah, I can't play.
Well,
It's too fast in
yeah.
my.
So, for example, let's say you were like, you saw Hyperscape, you checked it out, and you're like, oh, I can definitely talk about this stuff, right? And like, maybe there's an esports scene, maybe there's not. But because of your experience in Fortnite, because you used to be a Fortnite like god too, like you could start talking about that and being like the first people to talk about the strategic components of Hyperscape, right? And then once it releases, you like go and just like put out as much content about Hyperscape as you can. Like that might be an option, right? If um I don't know what other new game. If there's a new MOBA that feels like, oh, when Wild Rift comes out, right? Which is the mobile version of League of Legends that League of Legends Riot Games is
Oh
working on.
man. Oh man.
I know, I'm talking about mobile
No,
games.
no, no.
Yeah.
Don't bring it up.
But thinking about it that way too, especially if thinking about it that way if you are a planning on long term because you can't do short term things because you're just super busy. Like
Hmm.
having those options open are ways to solidify yourselves in um in the future, I think. And then even
Yeah,
if
I
you're
get.
able to show like, okay, I hate Hyperscape, but I was able to learn things about Hyperscape and I knew like the right content creators to find the good information to quickly learn about the game. Like those are skills that translate to any game. That could be League of Legends with the new patch. That can be the new esports game that we haven't seen yet. That esports Fall Guys or like whatever like crazy thing. Like those are all transferable skills that you can eventually add to a resume down the line for that high school opportunity or the collegiate opportunity and then LCS opportunities. Like so, even thinking about those building up those skills and practicing them on games that end up dying and that don't bring any value in the end, like I think is
Yeah.
still something worth thinking about.
I think it's just finding like the new game that I actually have interest in,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so hard to like in anything, if you don't really enjoy what you're doing, you're not like, whatever you put into it isn't gonna like come out as high quality. Like
Yeah.
you could say that you're putting everything, but if you don't actually like genuinely care about like the game, or if it's not like the style you like or whatever, it's like it's never gonna come out looking as good. But then it's also like, okay, but you get the experience, and then you also get like more generic traction, and then now you can transfer it to a game that you prefer. So
Yeah. And ultimately you might find out that you're like, you know what? I keep trying all these games and I don't care. I just love League and I just want to do League. Like that's also like good validation too. Then you could just like triple down on League instead of being distracted by everything else that's like new and exciting. That could be really important to learn too.
yeah, it's when Valorant came out, I was like, because of my CS:GO background, I just got tired of playing CS:GO.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, Valorant's gonna be my game. Like I played the hell out of the beta, and then the game dropped, and I was like, okay, nothing from the beta that I hated is fixed. So I guess I'm just not playing Valorant anymore. And it's like League's always just been the fallback. Like even if I take a break from playing the game, it's like I'm watching LCS, I'm watching content around it like all the time, and it's like an addiction at this point.
Yeah, and I feel the same way too. I've been like, even with work, I need to expand into other games and like understand them. And I'm like, oh, TFT is coming out. I'm gonna like get into TFT and I'm gonna learn this stuff and I'm gonna learn how to make content. And then eventually, I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't really care about TFT enough. And then like
Yeah.
part of that I need to get over because I need to be good at my job, right?
Yeah.
But also like I was playing TFT for a little bit. I was like climbing. I'm like, oh, you know, I'll try to get to plat in TFT, and I think I got to like silver or something. And I was still climbing. And I'm just like, but I miss playing League. So then I just started playing League again. You know,
Yeah.
so I totally feel you there. And I think luckily League is such a big game that you could figure out ways to do this, right? Even like I think something creative would be just like finding a random clash team, like even with Lola or something, that you can just coach or like help them, like even just talking about like, okay, this is where your draft sucked, and this is the holes in your champion pools, and this is what you need to do, and this is how you can prepare. Like even just practicing that could be valuable, or you know, it could be like, hey, how to approach your clash team next time for Demacia Cup or whatever. So I think
73.
what was that?
Uh, Demacia Cup 73.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, there's so many ideas that you could mess around with. And I would just do whatever you find interesting so that you can, you know, you don't feel bad waking up early or staying up late taking care of. Then eventually, at some point, you gotta really think, okay, like I've done 100 of these videos and they're all getting 5 views. How do I need to really approach this strategically and not waste as much time, because I've gotten better at editing, I've gotten better at doing all this stuff. Now I need to up the quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe you're past that whole learning phase and now you just like really need to like uh, be strategic and efficient.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder how good like my other thought was rather because there's so many people doing like LCS content, and it's like going the amateur route.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, okay, well, who's actually going to go and watch amateur like reviews?
Yeah.
And like maybe from like an analyst or like a scouting aspect, it'd be good to have like maybe like watch a team for like a split and then like note the progressions and issues with every player and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But then it's also like, is it worth putting the time in? Like, is that like, even though it's a good like tool to have, it's like, does the content matter?
Yeah.
Like, I don't
And
know if matter's the right word, but
no, I get you. I think you also have to realize that you're probably not going to get an LS size audience. And you also, if your goal is to get into esports, you don't need an LS size audience necessarily.
no, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I made a video about Golden Guardians that had like at the time 20 views, but the right people at Golden Guardians saw it. And that kind of was one thing that led to my hiring and like talking to them, right? So if you're able to make a video and do multiple videos and get good at it, and then you make another video that's like talking about Immortals Academy, but you send this to the GM at Immortals and he or she watches it, and they're like, oh, this guy knows what they're talking about. That could be the one view you actually needed to get a job, right?
Yeah, I guess that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily like you need to create content so people can see your stuff and you can build authority, but you don't need to be like the amazing content creator to get, because you're not trying to be a content, like your end goal isn't a content creator. Your end goal is to get a job in esports and coaching or analyst work, right?
Yeah.
And I think even like another approach you could do is, another thing you should think about is, what does the team need, right? Like what are the problems that their coaching staff is trying to solve? Maybe it's like We need to gather solo queue analytics so we can tell our team, our players what to play. I don't know if that's true or not, right? But if
I
you
think it's
know,
also really hard because like there's it'd be so nice if like at the end of a split like the scrim VODs would get put out or something
hmm
so you can see like what's going on in practice because you're basing everything off of 18 games and the team plays like
yeah,
and the team plays like 1,800 games throughout the whole season,
hmm
but you only see 18 of them and
yeah,
then play.
yeah, yeah. It's super tough. Absolutely. I mean, we get flamed. Golden Guardians gets flamed for our Nidalee picks, but there's a reason why I'm guessing we keep picking it.
I mean, there, it's like there has to be, right?
Yeah,
And I mean,
or our coaching staff is like just straight up dumb. But I mean,
well, it's either
Nidalee.
coaching staff or closer just refuse to play anything else.
Yeah, there's so many things we can speculate, right? But ultimately, I think objectively, you can see that Nidalee is a really great pick globally, and
Yeah,
you
and
can
it's just not
assume
transferred.
if coaching staff is competent that it's doing well in scrims or something, right? Or maybe we're just using those regular season games for practice for us to pull it out in playoffs and people are not banning it, or like who knows? But
Also, you think Anero is strategically having you guys throw games in the mid game with the Nidalee pick, so it's left up in playoffs, and then you guys smurf on it.
yeah, that's the salty TSM analysis for like how they
That
approach
was
their team.
that's big brain. No, the TSM doesn't have a coaching staff. That's their problem.
Yeah, so maybe I mean TSM might be the wrong one to try to do, but if you're able to like put out a video that's like the five biggest problems that TSM has, or like if you're able like, and this is what I mean by like trying to guess or figure out what their problems are and how you can solve them. Like that could be just as simple as like gathering data. If you want to do analysis work and you're able to compile data that somehow Mobalytics or other people don't have, or something that you can organize it uniquely, like and be
Yeah.
like, hey, um, this LCS team coach, like here are the win rates for all the champions, all the matchups against your mid laner's one trick pony, and this is where the good place to draft it is, or something like that. Or, um, oh, I put us. You're against TSM this week. This is all the solo queue games that this player is playing, or something like that. You know, the enemy team is playing, or something. Um, or maybe it's like, oh, I noticed that you always are missing this warding pattern, or your early game gets taken advantage of, like in half of
Consistently in
your
X
games.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I think those random things, and then you could always just like post that as content too, right? But then you can
hmm
also figure out a way for, maybe the coaching staff wants that, and yeah, it's really hard because ideally I think what you could do is be like, hey, CLG, because, or yeah, maybe CLG because they're
I can't
one of the
send it
worst
to their
teams.
coaching staff. They don't have a coaching staff.
You're right. Like maybe you send it, talk to Tafo and be like, "Hey, I'm really hungry. I'm willing to do free work. I want to do analyst work. What kind of like busy work can I do for you that would provide value?" Right? Because,
Yeah.
and like it always sucks. I hate going to people and being like, "What can I do for you?" Because that's more work for the person that's asking, or that's being asked, because then they're like, oh, this person wants an opportunity. I have to go find a free opportunity for them and figure out and ask people, blah, blah, blah.
But then I got to look over it and make sure they did it the right way, or
Yeah, exactly.
it's
So,
like
yeah, so trying to, like, ideally, you're like, oh, I know CLG needs extra hands in collecting this data or organizing their spreadsheets or something. But like all this information is so hard to figure out what it would actually be. So maybe really the best way is to somehow prove that you will help and you will save them time, um, by them investing a little bit in you, but like you wanting to provide value. It's really tricky. I don't know what the right ask is. And maybe I'll even ask like our coaching staff, like, what would, if you, how could someone ask them something that would be useful for the team? Because that is something I'm not familiar with.
yeah, it's a really like weird way to do it. You're almost like it's either you're assuming and then you can either look like an asshole
Yep.
or you look like a genius, and then
Yep.
you either start on a good note or a bad note,
Yep.
and then or you're like that like person who's asking like, "Hey, what can I do?" And then it's like gambling on that,
Hmm.
and then if you mess up, you don't really have a way out because it's like they told you what you needed and you couldn't follow through on it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so hard. I'm trying to like think of like, and I think this is where it's like when you figure out the right person to DM, you need to also figure out like spend 30 minutes or an hour or days like noodling over like what is my like 50 word or less like cold DM to the person. You know? Like how do I ask them the right thing? What are they going to respond to? Um how can I prove that I'm valuable and not a waste of their time and make it really easy for them? Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe that's like honestly like maybe you find out that COG competitive staff is really active in their Discord channel and you just start building a relationship where you're able to ask those questions without it feeling like a really hard random ask. I think like for example, Evil Geniuses, I think they have a lot of staff. I don't think it's coaching staff, but they have a server called Genius League where they are helping people like network and do resume reviews as well.
Mm-hmm.
And staff is really active in there. Um, that might not be the right place for you to go, but it could be. I'm not really sure. It might be an easy way to start interacting with these people. But for example, if you start like following the coaching staff for Evil Geniuses and like responding to their tweets and like having interesting conversation or asking the right questions to them in reply to their tweets, you start building that rapport, and then maybe that's when like once you get the follow, you wait a few weeks and keep building that rapport, and then slide into the DMs and be like, hey, I just wanted to ask, uh, I just wanted to say that I'm really interested in coaching, and I want to do some free work to gain some experience because I don't have much. But is there any like really busy work that would be uh helpful to you guys that I could start doing to just kind of build a professional relationship with you guys, you know? Maybe that's the right
Mm-hmm.
way to approach networking with these guys. Does that make
Evil
sense?
Geniuses has been one of the few teams I haven't checked their website, see
Mm.
what their like career options are.
Evil Geniuses hired like crazy once the new
They still have like
chronologies.
6 or 7 positions open right now.
Yeah, they're hiring like crazy.
Collegiate brand ambassador.
I think they hired like 70 people this year.
They came in with money bags. They bought Sven and Zazel.
Yeah, they're serious.
They're something, all right. I don't know how serious they are. They put in Hooney and Golden Glue in playoffs.
Oof. um, for example, like they do podcast. Actually, I feel like Artemis on Evil Geniuses. I have a feeling he might be an easy person to reach out to because he's so forward facing, and he's always like putting out. Have you seen their YouTube stuff that they're putting out with Artemis?
I have not.
So he does like a breakdown of a specific play that Evil Genius went through. Um, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, I really like it actually. I think they're being really transparent and they're probably giving a little too much information away. But to be honest, coaching staff should know any of this anyway, so it's actually not like they're giving an edge to
Yeah.
other teams or anything. But responding to those videos, like Evil Genius probably will notice that if you're able to respond to Artemis's tweet when he retweets it or something, would get in front of his face. Like, I wonder how many Twitter followers he has. Obviously, he's busy, right? Hitting him up
Hmm.
in playoffs is probably the wrong thing to do.
Well, they'll be out soon. Wait.
Yeah, so
Hopefully he's not the one of the people in your chat right now. It
um,
might be
he has 4K followers. So he's I'm sure he gets tons of DMs from people that are like, I want to be a coach, or I can do better than Golden Glue, or I'm the best top laner, diamond top player. top laner, just sign me right now. Like, but let's see. He tweeted out.
I think the best way would be his replies. He gets less than 10 replies on every tweet.
Mm-hmm. And I don't, unfortunately, I don't see him responding to any of them. But
I
he
wonder what
probably
the
sees
actual
them.
replies are.
Yeah, he probably still sees them. And if you give a good thing to reply to.
Well, yeah, like pretty much everything was just like good luck or like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not. Maybe that is a way to do it.
So yeah, I mean, I would say this is the kind of stuff you're looking for, right? The opportunities to get in front of these specific people, who is low hanging fruit. You know, maybe you realize that all the LCS coaching staff just like are too busy and they don't reply. So then you start going to collegiate stuff, right? Um, who I don't remember who won the collegiate, but like Maryville U is
Very.
always in the top. Oh, okay, so they won, right? Um, Responding to their coaching staff and figuring out the volunteer work you can do for them, or even maybe their players. You know, maybe you have to go reach out to a player and be like, hey, what kind of information do you need that I could like provide you to be? I don't know. That might not be right, but maybe there's something there too. Um, yeah, it's I think there's a lot of options, right? So you just have to figure out what makes sense, what works, take your shots, go back to the drawing board when none of them works, or how to double down on things that do work, etc., etc.
That makes sense.
Someone, Laredo Potato, that's a fun name to say, in chat said Nasir is a
Search
good
him up
person to
on.
follow.
I don't see him when I search.
Me neither.
And then I searched up chaotic neutral, who is also what he said.
Oh, chaotic neutral is the content piece.
From EG,
Yeah.
the diary. I thought it was diary of play.
Oh, chaotic neutral is their podcast, I
It's like
think.
a short-term podcast. I
Yeah.
think it's
So
like
if
20 or
you're
30 minutes.
yeah, if you're engaging in chat, because I think they have like 90 people in that chat when it's live, and like that's another way to get in front of people. I think that's a good point.
Engaging in any podcast is hard because I work night shifts, so I work 5:30 p.m. to 2 a.m.
That is tricky.
Yeah.
You know, sneaking off for that really long poop break.
Well, I mean, I can work. Like I have my phone on and I listen to stuff throughout. It's just hard. Um, like
Yeah.
staying interactive.
All right. We got
Yeah,
we
I
got
got
links in his ear.
so many. All the links.
All the links. Chat is heroes.
Pog chat.
Yeah, so he doesn't get even a lot of engagement on his tweets, so who knows if someone responded to him, he might it might be an easy reply back and easy to be noticed by him. Yep, I see he responded to someone with no profile picture, so plot difference is proving to be a bit big in this series. Then response, I am a hater for thinking double lift hasn't been good to split. Right? Question mark. He responded, he hasn't.
It's not wrong either.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and you can even get creative with like content creators too. Tim Svenhuisen, is that his name? Seven Houston or whatever. Founder of Oracle's Elixir. You know, he
The
like maybe
website.
yeah, the website. And he does stuff for Esports One, and maybe even doing free work for Esports One might make sense. You know, maybe you have to do like write articles for a little bit. 'Cause I know, for example, Manny writes article and coverages for esports media sites. This is analytical work and stuff. Yeah,
I
Shaker
can't
is
write.
really. I'm sorry.
I can't write.
Then probably writing articles is not the way to go. Unless you think you can learn it and it makes sense to spend all that time learning how to write.
Have some of the worst spelling and grammar in the world.
Hey, if you there are ways around that too. You got spell check and Grammarly and all those other things to help.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, I think what we're getting from this is there's a lot of other ways. There's a lot of directions you can go, right?
Hmm.
It's just figuring. And maybe you spend 3 months testing all these ones out because you have no idea what's the best, and then um, after 3 months, you figure out like, okay, actually, I can write good articles, and for some reason, people like my articles. So you start doing that, or you're like, you know what, this YouTube stuff is doing better, or maybe like, oh, you're the LCS analysis that's like booming on TikTok, or like who knows, right?
Oh
Um,
man.
because I was actually talking to someone at Hitmarker, who's a esports job posting site,
Hmm.
and they were saying this one guy that makes like coaching content on YouTube, like career coaching content. Actually, maybe you should check him out. Coach Alney. I don't know how to say his name. Um, he has had trouble on YouTube, but on TikTok he kind of blew up,
Coach
relatively
Olney.
speaking. And he makes like esports and coaching content or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's so funny. That's so weird. Um, Again, I don't know if that's the right thing for you to do. But there, I think, yeah, the big takeaway is that there's a lot of different creative ways to approach this rather than like um, just applying for coaching jobs.
Had no plans on applying to anything.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just because at this point I'm coming in, it's just like it's only talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd rather have like at least something I could show, and then if they say, we're still not interested, like I'd rather see like something like X, Y, or Z, and then it's like, okay, well now I'll go make X, Y, and Z and do it that way. I don't want to come in like empty-handed.
Yeah. Maybe starting a podcast with people that are also like-minded like you is the way to go.
I
That's
thought
also an
about going
option.
the podcast route, and then it's also like, okay, I need someone who can commit to like my really awful schedule.
Mm.
And then it's also like, okay, how good does like analytical breakdown of League of Legends actually do over audio and not
Yeah.
like visuals? But then I could also do something where it's like, I don't know, take like takes that like people on Hotline League or like opinions that like other podcasts go over, and then like just break down my opinion on it, because
Yeah.
then it's not like analytical form, but it's still like the breakdown of the game, whether that's like draft or like an opinion on team strength or something.
I like that idea too. Like if you, I could see that you some take happens about TSM in Hotline League. Mark Z gives his comment about it, and then you make a piece a week later that says like, "Was Mark Z right?" And then you post it on Twitter. You tag Mark Z. It's a 3 minute video that's really in depth, really good. And then Mark Z might like it or retweet it because it's really good or something. I
Hmm.
think that's really smart. And then maybe you take advantage of YouTube SEO if you use Hotline League stuff and yeah, and with a podcast, maybe it's just actually it's not a podcast, but it's like a video podcast that lives on YouTube or something. And um, yeah, I don't know. I always like doing things with other people. Obviously, there's limitations and uh, there's pros and cons to that. But especially
Yeah.
when on the grind, like trying to figure all this stuff out, and hopefully, like joining the Discord community or the stream community or whatever that I have, like I hope that people can do this together rather than by themselves because it's so hard to do it by yourself. It's really discouraging, and sometimes the hardest thing is just like continue doing it for another month and not giving up.
Yeah, just keeping, because I was like ultimately my biggest thing with like Lola. It's like, okay, I was there, and
Mhm.
then Blake would be there most of the time, and then you're just kind of shooting in the dark on whether or not other people were showing up or not.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well now there's no topic, and
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, so I make all these topics, and then we don't use them anyway. And I was like, and then like I started work, going second shift, and then school, and I was just like, yeah, I just don't have time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's one of the reasons why I left Lola because I realized with my like I enjoyed doing it. It was obviously something very special to me creating the podcast, and I
Hmm.
enjoyed it. But the thing is, I realized like, hey, when it comes to my time, uh, I need to be more efficient with it, and I'd rather spend like take the 5 hours, 7 hours a week I spend like building the Lola community and like organizing things, instead creating my own stuff that I can control and work with other people, because Lola is a hobby and a fun thing for those guys. And I'm perfectly
Yeah.
fine with that, and that's what it was started off as. So it's not right for me to pivot and be like, this is a serious thing. I need to get a job in esports, so now Blake, you need to come prepared every week. Like that's not fair.
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, it would have been a little bit more fair from you because you were there in the beginning. I came in like 150 episodes later,
Yeah.
and it's like at that point, it's like, okay, we talk about corn for half the episode, and then we might mention League for 10 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yep, I totally get it. I feel you. I totally feel you.
yeah. Do you think I should make like, because right now, like, I have an old YouTube channel
Hmm.
that I used to upload like other games on. Since then I've taken pretty much everything down. Do you think it'd be better to like just start a new one
Um,
or continue with the old one?
I don't know. That question gets asked a lot. Like if it feels better to have a fresh start, that's fine. I don't know if like, especially if you pivot content too, like do your old subscribers care about, like would they care about your new content? And honestly,
I mean, probably not.
how many subscribers do you have roughly?
uh, three something, 300 something.
Oh, okay. Hmm. Because also like YouTube, like subscriptions don't matter so much anymore because most people
Yeah,
get served from the
yeah,
homepage. So even if you post like, if you had 300 subscribers, if you posted a new content that's completely different, I don't even know if YouTube's gonna serve it to them. It probably will
exactly.
try to, but then they'll be like, I don't know, I don't remember who this is, maybe, or this
And
content.
even since then, it's like the channel sat dormant for so long because I pretty much got all the subscribers like 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm.
Like I was uploading like 4 times a week, and that's when like my stream picked up as well. I
Oh,
have
okay.
like 500-600 followers on Twitch. Back when I played Counter Strike. Um,
Yeah, I could like, I think this is, you might want to do some research. I don't know what the right answer is, and I don't know what YouTube cares about as much.
mhm,
I I personally think, for me, I thought about that too as I pivoted my content from just being like vlogs.
mhm.
Um, I didn't want to deal with making another channel and having another channel to like on my list. And I personally thought that the way YouTube works, like YouTube is gonna find the people that might want to watch my video and then find out if those people actually want to watch my video or not. If I did a Fortnite video, if I did a League video, if I did a whatever, like a my real life video, like YouTube will still try to like quickly figure out who this video is for, whether or not like my previous videos are like that. That's my opinion on things for some of it. But
Yeah,
yeah, especially you said like you took down some of the videos.
I took down pretty much everything.
Yeah, like I think even with my channel, with the pivot, um, I don't think it helped or hurt necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me, like I was just practicing things too. Like if I was like, oh, I'm gonna go full time on a channel and it's gonna be this, I might like create a new channel, start from scratch, so then there's no confusion about my old videos. But to me, I'm just like, hey, my first like just ask video where I answer questions from the community, like I don't think anyone's gonna watch it anyway. I'm just posting it because I need to get practice on it and then practice posting and practice doing thumbnails. So like that was my goal. It wasn't like to make banger videos every single time that's gonna get thousands of views, that's gonna grow my channel to 10,000 subscribers in 1 month or anything. Um,
Yeah.
I needed to get over the barrier of like stop thinking about things and just like start creating things. That's how I approached it.
Yeah, it makes sense. My biggest worry is just like, even though I know what I put out is going to be bad, like in correlation to what it should turn out in the long run,
Hmm.
um, I don't want it to be like off.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Mr. Beast, you know who Mr. Beast is, right?
Yeah.
He created like 7 different YouTube channels before it finally took off. I don't know exactly like why he did new channels, if they're really hard pivots, or maybe even YouTube was different like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 2 years ago
Yeah,
with that
for
kind of
sure.
stuff. Um, but realistically, I think it's more important to get working rather than channel optimization right now for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then like, you know, I don't think it's going to hurt like you're going to do a few of these videos and they suck and then you feel like, "Oh, you know, I got my groove." You can just start a new channel then, too. You can either upload your old ones or um just completely start a new channel. Like Devin Nash did that. Devin Nash is someone I talk about a lot. He was a CLG owner and now he's chief marketing officer for an agency. He
Hmm.
had this channel. Now it's called Devin Nash, but he had an old channel called Mylixia, which is his like gamer handle. Um, and I can't spell it, so I can't find it. But he also did, and he's posting like similar content, I think. In the end of Melixia and the early stages of Devin Nash. So, um, but ultimately, because his content is good and people like his content, it's like that's why his channel's doing well. Not because he changed channels or started a new channel or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. Probably not as big of a deal.
Yeah, I
So I
agree.
just keep uploading on this.
Yeah, because
Okay.
like there's so many things to think about, so many details to think about, and then what you have to do is be like, okay, what is gonna be the most bang? What's the most value added thing that I can do? Is like getting paid editing software versus free editing software, and figuring out which is the best editing software to use, and spending 4 hours figuring that out. The most important thing is that gonna bring you more value than just like putting out 2 videos? And just doing working with whatever editing software that's free that you find first, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's really important. That I think a lot of people get stuck on that, and I get stuck on that a lot, and it kind of hurts me because like I want to spend more time editing my videos, but
Hmm.
then I'm just like I don't think it's gonna matter if my video is 10% more polished versus if I'm ready for the stream this weekend. I spend time for the
Yeah.
stream, and like um if I spend an extra hour on my thumbnail, that's gonna be more important than um, getting alerts set up correctly. Like getting my YouTube chat working on my stream, it's not working. And is that really that important? Honestly, probably not, because there's only a few people on my YouTube channel that's watching live, and shout out to them that actually are. That's pretty cool. Versus like just spending the 30 minutes preparing for the stream better, right? So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what, especially if you're short on time, like what's the most efficient way to use your time is important.
Yeah. What's gonna make the biggest impact?
Yeah. 'Cause, yeah, we all get drawn out on the small details that only bring like like that's only 10% important versus like the big things that the big problems to solve that will bring like 80% of the value.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go. I think rather than doing just like 40-minute like VOD reviews, which was my original plan of like LCS and then like Academy games, I think I'm gonna go like the focus throughout about like more important stuff, whether it's like blatantly bad from one team or blatantly like just like really good from another,
hmm
and then just like keep it almost as like a highlight video for like breakdown where it's like 10 minutes, and
yeah,
then I'll probably do like the Hotline League thing
yeah, I like that. Just
where
ride the coattails of other people's content.
I just rip their takes and then I give my opinion on the take and then
Yeah,
like
I would.
figure out who was right.
I think one thing that will be valuable too, that's along the Hotline League thing. Um, go to the comment section and see what people are talking about. Go to Reddit and see what people are talking about. Go to a Last Shadow video and see what people are talking, what his chat and comments are talking about. Because that will give you ideas, and that will give you things that people, especially if they're questions that they're asking that no one is answering. Like, if that person is asking it, that probably represents a large percentage of the community that's also thinking that same question.
Yeah.
So that will help give you ideas and like take advantage of the hot topics. And obviously Reddit like is just full of armchair analysts, right?
I don't want to just be looked at as an armchair analyst, man.
I know, but you take those armchair analysts and tell them why they're wrong. Oh, actually, if you wanted to go a little more personality, I think something that's missing from the scene. Do you remember Mark Z's blame game? Do you remember that piece of content he used to do? It's
I think
old.
so, but I'm not 100%.
A lot of people
He
miss
used to
it.
do it when he was on TL, right?
I think it was during his TL times. It's hard to find the Mark.
Yeah, 4 years ago. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I missed that. I think that was such a good idea. And
So you just pretty much flame Reddit?
yeah, I guess so. Obviously, it's coming from Mark Z, which probably means more. I don't know if
I
anyone
was
did
about to
this.
say, it's just going to be me, who isn't a Reddit analyst, but isn't a normal analyst either, just telling Reddit analysts that they're wrong.
Yeah, but Reddit might eat that up. I don't know. Maybe this is like yeah,
It could go really bad or it could go really well.
yeah. But
Either all of Reddit just gangs up and hates me, or, which I guess doesn't really matter.
yeah, that works
Just
for
Reddit.
a lot of people.
Alright, I'll add this to my sticky note.
But I think if you're looking for ideas, like the blame game was a good example of looking at Reddit, see what everyone's talking about, and then like talking about that. And I think what was intriguing about this piece of content is that like sometimes Reddit's right, sometimes Reddit's wrong, and it's also fun to disagree or agree with them and be like, yeah, I knew that too. I'm right too. Mark Z has my back because I'm smart too. So it's just a fun thing to interact with.
I like that idea.
Oh, I miss this content. I really looked forward to watching these every week.
So I shouldn't flame Golden Guardians, right?
If we deserve it, you're allowed to flame us.
Then you won't talk to me again?
Well, if you're not flaming me personally, I think I'll be okay. I might say you're wrong.
I'll be like, dude, I can tell Sam constructed this draft. What is this draft?
It's potato draft. That's funny.
Maybe I can see if I can. Maybe I can find. What if I just interview Reddit analysts?
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if people would care, but the content's good. The content can win out eventually if it's marketed well. Content is king. But also, again, I have to also remember, like, I'm a content person. I got to remember you're not necessarily trying to be a content creator. You're trying to create content to build authority and get you a job. So,
Well, that's like the biggest reason I stopped doing YouTube, because I had like a lot of fun like doing it, but I am the most inefficient editor in the world, and I hated editing. So now I was like, screw YouTube. I'm gonna go stream, and then I don't have to worry about editing. And then it's like, okay, well now I have to like moderate my Twitch chat, and then I just have to sit here and look at chat like flaming me the whole time, and it's like, is that worth it?
Yeah, totally. Devin Nash. So right now he's situated as like the guy that understands Twitch the best, right? Whether that's true or not, but that's his brand, and I like his takes. He quickly identifies that Twitch is such a weird platform because to grow on Twitch, you need to be less on Twitch. Because Twitch does not give discoverability well. It only really helps the top creators.
Oh yeah,
like the top creators. So if you want to grow big on Twitch, you actually have to do YouTube. If you want to grow on Twitch, you actually have to be on Twitter. And you have to create content. And his advice when he does like coaching, consulting, and like coaching sessions and like talks with big streamers is like, okay, you're streaming 80 hours. What if you streamed 40 hours and spent the extra 40 hours or even 20 hours making YouTube content? Oh, what if you actually invested the money you make on Twitch because you're not an editor to pay for an editor to create YouTube content for you? I don't think that's necessarily your route because you probably shouldn't spend money on getting an editor. But if you collaborated with someone that's an editor, that's also an analyst, and you're able to like barter with something that's not money, but with like teamwork and network and whatever else, maybe whatever you can bring to the plate, that might be the smart way to do it too. But yeah,
Yeah.
youtube YouTube is like, honestly, I believe the best platform to get discovered, just because YouTube is extremely extremely smart, like the algorithm and everything. It's just like, it's obviously hard because there's a lot of people and there's a lot of good content out there.